in thinking about unlimiting tomorrow, we're going to talk three main things. So one, we're going to talk about future back thinking. We're going to talk about leading from your strengths, and we're going to talk about leading like a scientist. I did tell you we're going to do some thinking. And how we're going to do this, we're going to try emulate how Jesus taught, in that he taught telling stories, and then he learned a principle. And then he told another parable. And he was just taking stories from ordinary day-to-day activities. And I want to just bring some of our kind of contemporary modern activities in from a leadership lens, so that we can beautifully and carefully and accurately translate the vision for tomorrow into the day-to-day activities. Because we are pregnant here with the vision, but how we translate it and we track it down to what happens on Tuesday matters. Vision is so fragile, and vision leakage is so prevalent. And I'm going to show you through some of the stories. And if you allow me, I'll talk about a story of a bank in America. I'll talk about some other technology company. I'll talk about my story. I'll weave in a number of stories. Will that be okay? It might feel like I'm going left field, but just walk with me. Just imagine Jesus telling a parable of some sort. Are we good? Are we good with that? Right, so let's go in future back thinking. And for this first story, I want to tell a story of a bank in America called Wells Fargo. Are we familiar with that bank? Right, so Wells Fargo, imagine their executives went to the conference. They came back with vision. And they say we aspire to create deep and enduring relationship with our customers. We want to provide them with exceptional experience, discover their needs, and provide them with the most relevant products, services, advice, and guidance. That sounds right for a bank, yeah? You want to bank with them immediately. There's a problem. The statement is just too abstract. Deep and enduring relationship, a customer experience. It just feels abstract. Now, to solve that, this is the step number one. They translated deep and enduring relationship with our customers into a cross-selling strategy. It makes sense. The more products I have with the bank, the stickier I might be as a customer, yeah? If I've got a check account, savings account, invest, and etc., there's a good chance that I might not leave that bank. Okay, they banked on that. Okay, if we're going to do cross-selling, therefore we must measure products per customer, yeah? They measured accounts per customer. And in 1998, they set at 3.2 accounts per customer, average for the bank, yeah? They pushed that metric to 3.4. They pushed it in 2008, 5.7. In 2026, it's set at 6.23 accounts per customers. Wells Fargo was renowned as the kings of cross-sell. I know a bank here in South Africa that traveled to the US to go study the art of cross-selling. Because the average for Wells Fargo sets at 6.3 accounts per customer. The average for the US bank set at 2.71. Just chalk and cheese. And our celebrity CEO, John Stumpf, was named Banker of the Year in 2013. Question is, what could go wrong? All right, let's play the video.
The CEO of Wells Fargo appeared on Capitol Hill and faced a barrage of questions about the bank's conduct under his leadership and why employees opened nearly 2 million phony accounts. Regulators say the workers, under pressure to meet sales goals, had secretly created unauthorized bank and credit card accounts for customers since 2011 without their knowledge. Today, Bank Chairman John Stumpf apologized before the Senate Banking Committee.
I am deeply sorry that we failed to fulfill on our responsibility to our customers, to our team members, and to the American public. We never directed nor wanted our team members to provide products and services to customers that they did not want. That is not good for our customers, and that is not good for our business. It is against everything we stand for as a company.
More than 5,000 workers, mostly lower level, have been fired. But senators on both sides of the aisle said it was Stump who should be paying the price. Massachusetts Democrat Elizabeth Warren.
So you haven't resigned. You haven't returned a single nickel of your personal earnings. You haven't fired a single senior executive. Instead, evidently, your definition of accountable is to push the blame to your low-level employees who don't have the money for a fancy PR firm to defend themselves. It's gutless leadership. You squeezed your employees to the breaking point so they would cheat customers and you could drive up the value of your stock and put hundreds of millions of dollars in your own pocket. And when it all blew up, you kept your job, you kept your multi-million-dollar bonuses.
Wait, what went wrong? We were trekking together beautifully, weren't we? The young people will say we were cruising nicely. And John Stump actually wanted, maybe you talk to me, what do you think went wrong? Shoot. Greed, yeah, and anything else, pressure. What else? They pressurized, oh. And it was no longer psychologically safe. Let me add a little bit more to the case. John Stump wanted the average to be 8 accounts per customers. Right, so this is where you start to talk to me. Just shoot. Why do you think he probably wanted 8 accounts per customers? Just guess. Promise the board. So I must tell you, being a lecturer, you get given these powers. They are godlike. You can tell people they're right or wrong. Literally, people write an exam and they go, no, wrong. I mean, it's just, if you want to consider a career in lecturing, it's the most, right. So can I take this time to exercise those powers? Do you allow? So that's good thinking, but it's incorrect. And anyone else wants to guess? Anyone else wants to guess? Yes. Sorry, say that again? But why did you want 8 accounts per customers? There's a scientific reason for 8. Anyone? There's a think with me, business people, where are we? Yeah. Once you're locked in, so it's an entrenchment, a number. Okay, anyone else? Last person who wants to guess? Yes. Meeting the budgets. So good thinking. Just. I'll tell you. Are you sure? Go for it. Stock price. Beautiful thinking. Incorrect. So I'll tell you the reason. Because 8 is great. True story. 8 is great. And they ran the bank at give me 8. The whole entire company ran on 8 is great. So think with me what happened to the vision. We aspire to create deep and enduring relationship with our customers. We want to provide them with exceptional experience. We want to discover their needs, provide them with the most relevant products, services, advice, and guidance. It's beautiful, isn't it? And then it went through a reductive process, which says, okay, this whole thing, we can make it a cross-selling strategy. Then it went through the measurements process, which says we're going to measure accounts per customer. And then it went down to 8 is great. This is how vision can quickly be shrunk down to a number. We can blame John Stump, but I can come back here and say, what are we chasing here by 2030? bridge targeting. Why 5,000? We can set out on a path, and then we can whittle down that powerful word down to a number, and then the church runs around trying to get 1,000 people. And in the process, we lose the original vision. So there's a lot of things that happen in the case. One of the things we talk about, which we see in faith-based organization, for-profit, non-profit organizations, they fall into what we call the surrogation snare, which is the tendency to replace strategy with an internal metric. The tendency to replace this process of translating this vision. In the process, it got whittled down to like 3 services. And the staff and the volunteers are running around because we are chasing 3 services. We are chasing 4,000 members. And the second one is what we call present forward thinking. I'll unpack each in 10. So what do I mean by this process of surrogation, replacing strategy with the metric? Maybe let me give some definition. First definition is that we think of strategy, at least in our field, as this integrated set of choices that positions an organization in its environment to achieve its vision over the long run. What does that mean? This process that we are called into as leaders of thinking through the choices we make within the community God has called us into to protect that vision He has given us for the future. And in this space of doing this, it's possible that the work and the vision gets hijacked by a number. Another way to look at this thing, there's another great book that just summarizes how this integrated set of choices looks like, which is a cascade of choices, which starts off with what are our aspirations? What is God calling us to do in Quebeca? Where will we play? How will we win where we are placed? How will we configure ourselves back home? And lastly, what are the priorities, measurements, and matrices? If I ask you if you've got a strategy, you will be able to sort of walk me through this cascade of choices, and we'll realize that they're integrated and they make sense. If any of them doesn't link to the other, we don't have a strategy. We have multiple programs happening everywhere. Some of them borrowed from what the other church down the road is doing. Completely de-linked from what God said to you. So this whole thing of the surrogation snare, I just kind of swapped it and used the more South African relevant term, which is the strategy, the vision can be hijacked by a number. And my prayer is that while you catch a flight all the way to Durban, this vision doesn't get hijacked by a number, chasing 1,000 members. I speak to a lot of people and say, tell me about your calling, the vision for the church. It's hardly ever about a number. It's a beautiful story of love for the community, that God sees the community in Boksburg and say, I'll plant a church there. And this church is going to serve this community, and it's going to be plan A for this community. That's the original intent. Before you know it, we're talking about church attendance metrics. And the question then becomes, when are we going to talk about Boksburg, God's plan, as plan A? What is that for the city? And how might we track that on Tuesday? Because leaders get hijacked by an internal metric. And then we build and we build from 1,000 to 1,200, 1,300. And then we celebrate and we go like John Stumpf. If you go to the next slide, like John Stumpf was celebrating from 3.2 to 3.4 to this and the following year. And then we are in this rat race. I think last year we hit 6.0. We need to get 6.27. We need to get to that number. What happened to the vision? Did God call us to have a church attendance of 837 people? Present forward thinking. We can walk out of here with a vision, and then we go back and push the metric, and push the metric, and push the metric. And what she said, and then to a point where we squeeze the few members of staff that we have, because Bridge has got 1,000 people. Thrive needs to have 1,200. It doesn't happen here. Right, and I think God is asking for us as leaders. Yes, there's things we must do to maintain and do the work on a weekly basis, which is present forward. You know, we're concerned about near future operations, day to day, the service is running. But he's also inviting us to future back thinking, where we can pause with the repaired imagination and we go, what's God's plan A for Gqeberha? What's going on in this community? I want to be able to read a church report from Durbanville without the report mentioning the name. And then I go, I think that could be a report for a church from Durbanville. Because what they are solving, what they are praying for, their matrices, it feels like it's solving an environment, not Durbanville, I don't know, but an environment that's got a high crime rate, high divorce rate, etc., etc. And it seems like God's plan A was to insert a church there. And it looks like the education stats are starting to change. The crime levels are coming down. The church in that place has become the light of the world. We spoke a lot this week about the lamp, yeah? The lamp is no good without the oil. How about a lamp full of oil, but under a bowl? And we're inside here measuring our oil levels. All right. It might get tense, so I'm going to tell another story. Right. Let's tell another story. So, some of you watch NBC Africa. One of these days, you might be familiar with Tim Cook, the outgoing CEO of Apple. He was on CNBC, and he said these words. He said, if you zoom out into the future and you look back and you ask yourself the question, what was Apple's greatest contribution to mankind? What do you think he said the answer will have been? Don't Google yet. Just give me the joy of being a lecturer and kind of mark your assignments. All right, talk to me. Who wants to talk to me? What do you think Tim Cook said? Just give. Innovation, good thinking. Beauty, good thinking. Connection, good thinking. Good thinking. Good thinking. Wrong, good thinking. Wrong. Sorry? Wrong, I didn't hear, but wrong. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, thanks.
There's
There's a South African word to learn, highball. True story. So as I tell this story, I'll tell it very quickly because of time. Yeah, and I would like to ask my colleagues to walk with me as fast as we can. So he said it will be health. Yeah? So imagine that as what you get dropped in your spirit at a vision level. What do you do with that? Do you go back home and devise a cross-selling strategy and push people to produce 8 accounts per customers? Or you can go a different path. So let's see what happens. So Apple decided that, okay, we're gonna make the biggest impact on health. They said we're gonna bring health data in one place on your phone. We're gonna make your watch an intelligent guardian of the user's health. We're gonna create features to improve everyday health and fitness. We're gonna fuel innovation, third party, and fitness apps. Right? This is like we're just starting at the big health, and now we're kind of unpacking the strategic objectives, if it were. They further on to say we're going to enable scientific discovery, strengthen physician-patient care, promote healthy lifestyle, support public health. It's still relatively fluffy, yeah? So then they kind of did an update not long ago, and then they start talking about all the activities they're doing. And some of you are familiar with these things, with exercise and workout rings, etc. They have now sleep health, wind down, sleep stages, respiratory health, blood oxygen, heart health, low and heart notification rates, ECG apps, irregular rhythmic indicators. They've got mobility health, fall detection. They can measure your walking steadiness, hearing health, mindfulness health, health education, women's health, cycle tracking, etc., hand washing, medication. Some of these might not mean much. I worked at Discovery Health, so I know if I had time, I can unpack why some of these things matter. They continue, and I want to just highlight 2 things in the process. They say cardiovascular diseases cause nearly 40% of deaths for people under 70. So the launch of their watch in 2015, in 2017, they launched the biggest heart study in the world. This is a cell phone company. This is not the World Health Organization. They followed that in 2019 with the heart and movement study. And then they continue to do a lot more in this space. The second one is this. They said falls are a leading cause of injury and death for adults over the age of 65. 25% of people will fall each year. I built a division within Discovery Health called Discovery Home Care. So I spent quite a bit of time in the elderly spaces. Falls are a big problem. Some of us might not appreciate, but this. So long story. The watch. 2018 fall detection, 2021 walking steadiness, and all the rest of it. Just those kind of 2 examples. Let me just quickly go. They enable doctor visits with all the data in one place. They're helping optimize clinician mobility and workflow. And some of you in the health space know that the doctor is it's almost like a bottleneck. If you can optimize that, you get a lot of efficiencies. Enabling research, secure communication amongst healthcare professionals, developer innovation, remote care, etc., etc. They've partnered with, Stanford Medicine, School of Medicine, and a bunch of other universities that will come up on the screen. They did this update that says Apple hits a major milestone in a moonshot to bring non-invasive blood glucose monitoring to the Apple Watch. So imagine they get that right. If they can measure glucose in the blood, what else might they measure? Oh, the other one on hypertension. Would you now sort of believe Tim Cook? I have a question. If you zoom out into the future and you look back and ask yourself the question, what was AOG Group Church X's greatest contribution to its community? That's a true future-based question. And I would like to invite you to think about this question with me. Can your church report sound like a church somewhere in the UK? Does your church have to be in Durbanville? If I look at the activities of the church, can you tell me that this church is in Pretoria North? If I look at the weekly program, if I look at the staffing arrangement, who is hired, who does what? If I look at the volunteer setup, can it kind of tell me that perhaps this is a church in Jamestown? Without you telling me where you are based. Because if I can't, there's a vision here, and most of the people, 8 out of 10, if I ask each one of you, that vision is linked to a community. If I go to the AOG website, it says that the church in Jamestown, it's God's plan A in Jamestown. The question is, what's happening in Jamestown? If the church exists in Jamestown, what's the crime rate in Jamestown? What's the GDP there? What are the industries? How many young people exist? What's the birth rate of children? How many elderly are in Jamestown? On Tuesday when we meet, we are kind of going, this is Jamestown. And God's heart is broken by the crime rate here. And his plan A is Thrive Church in Jamestown. It's possible that all of this is happening in Jamestown. God's heart breaks for Jamestown, but Thrive Church in Jamestown is counting church attendance. The vision in that instance has been hijacked by church attendance numbers. I meet people. I say, hey, what's happening? What's the strategy? And then they'll be like, yeah, if it's church or somewhere else, it takes them a minute to tell you how many numbers they're running. But all I want to hear is there was a vision. That God is looking at Pretoria North and go, how can the unemployment rate be this high? And then say, what's my plan? Plan A. Plan A, plan B, plan C. Plan A, Thrive Church. I'm just using Thrive because. and then he's got this, plan A, Thrive Church. Thrive Church. Day one, we are passionate about we have the same heart God has for this place. Time passes. Then vision leaks. It's become about an internal metric. So the Bible says in Matthew 5:14, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand. Is your ministry on its stand? Because if it is, we will see a couple of things when we study a story of Apple. They follow what many organizations also do, which is build, invest, partner. Or build, buy, partner, in Apple's case. There's things that Apple as an organization can build, they can do. Right? There's things that we as a church here, physically we can do. We can run a service, we can do marriage, we can do funerals, there's things we can do. There's things we can invest in that other people are doing that can enhance what God is worried about in the community. The third one is there are other organizations and people and structures we can partner with to solve the problem. There's a fantastic book by one of my favorite author, Rem Shiran, called Rethinking sort of Competitive Advantage. This is at a core now. And he says, in this digital age, a company doesn't compete, its ecosystem does. What it means by that is a church in Jamestown that's fighting the darkness there. It's in its own, it's not going to make it. Who have we partnered with? How strong is your ecosystem? Of a church, of government, of business schools, of primaries there, of farming community. How strong is your ecosystem of partnerships to be God's plan A? The problem is leading an ecosystem of partners. That's a lot more difficult. Because you can't just command and control. You can't just declare a word to your partner who is a business school. It just needs a different approach to this. So if I look at the investment of the church, can I tell that this is probably a church in Centurion? Where's the money going? What are we investing in? Is what we're investing in the same as what breaks God's heart for Centurion? Or the God's heart for Centurion's vision has leaked and we are now left with internal matrices? The second thing I was going to talk about is how much you lead, because to lead in an ecosystem place requires something just slightly different. And for that, I want to kind of just figure out if you can run me some of those questions on the screen. And then, as I said, you can participate. Raise your hand with me if you tend to talk to people in elevators, airplanes, grocery stores, and all the rest of it. Wow, what is wrong with everyone here? Who brought all of you together? Please, can you have a prayer meeting? All right, raise your hand if you have a color-coded or otherwise organized closet. How? Oh, like case in point. All right, raise your hand very quickly if you write down a list of things to do and you stick to it even on weekends. I need to be at a different place. Okay, I can raise 2 hands on this one. Raise your hand if you need to pick someone to race while driving. Raise your hand if you tend to ask too many questions. Okay, this is what it's me. Raise your hand if you push the elevator button to remind the elevator that you are there. Right, so, we can go on and on with those types of questions, but those things, they happen just naturally. And in our strength kind of work, we say that those things are a natural pattern of thinking, feeling, and behaving. And when that's productively applied, we call that talent. You have a natural pattern of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Some of you effortlessly and instinctively start conversation. Some of you, think in an orderly manner. Some of you easily and naturally influences others. It just comes natural to you. Some of you just see pattern in data with no training. Yeah? Some of you consistently have a positive outlook. Have you met those people at the office? Right. So in our line of work, we do these assessments to help for people to see their natural pattern of thinking and feeling. And Gallup has done this whole thing research-wise. I'm run out of time. But what happens is you get these top 5 talent themes that's unique to you. And they found over the years, they've done all of these things, that 1 in 33 million people have the same talent theme pattern. if that case, it says that there's literally two people that behave naturally like you in South Africa. Will it not be a tragedy if you don't even know what that is for you? So that's the one thing. And I think there's too many tools these days for you to just kind of understand who you are, how you're hardwired. Because why this matters is that your strength, we kind of sort of say your strength is your ability to consistently deliver excellent positive results in a specific task. And it's made up largely of three things: your talent, your skills, and your knowledge. Yeah, the skills you can all acquire the same. Knowledge, we can all read the same things. But what's unique about you is your natural pattern of thinking, feeling, and behaving. I was in a silent retreat many years ago, and I was a young leader, and I was frustrated because the leader wanted to mold me into something, and it wasn't, and I was just like, I'm wired this way. I want to explore. I want to study. I want to do this and that and that. And then this wise silent retreat director sort of said to me, have you considered that God made you this way? It just freed me forever. God made you a certain way. And many of you are walking around apologizing for how God made you. Some of you are activators. You get the project going, and then you lose your energy when it's time to finish. And so how you surround yourself and how you structure your teams is such that you've got finishers next to you. Some of you are bright, ideated people. We love you, but you're not the best executors. So if we could talk more if we had more time, but it's incumbent on us as leaders to create this strength-based environment. If you lead someone, please figure out what is their strength and create an environment where their talents and their strength are on display for God's glory. God made you this way. How about He made you this way, but you're not aware of how He made you? And some of these, and then you're being told, you must fix that, you must fix that. Last thought, there's a quote by the Don Clifton, the father of the strength movement. He says, what will happen when we start thinking about what's right with people rather than fixating on what's wrong with them? If I go and look at your development plans for the young leaders in your church, are you developing their strengths or are you trying to fix their weaknesses? And that's why most of the PDPs, personal development plans, even in corporates, don't work because they're weakness-based instead of being strength-based. If Lionel Messi worked under you, right? Familiar with Lionel Messi. Left-footed footballer, yeah? How will you coach him? Let's fix your right foot. Let's make you a holistic soccer player. Okay, we ran out of time. In the short time we had together, I wanted to say that the vision God has sparked and has birthed, may we please structurally protect it and be that light of the world. I want to be able to come to your church and your ministry and hear stories of what God is doing outside, enabled by internal metrics. Not internal metrics for internal metrics. Because that hijacks a vision. Second thing is that once you can fully appreciate God's vision, you realize that alone you won't make it. That God has planted all these institutions. I want to see a pastor somewhere in a farm, because your church is in the Val and it's a farming community. And you're thinking strategically with farmers because God's plan for the Val, God's plan A is the church. How can the church not be engaged in the main farming, in the main activity You don't have to farm, but you can partner with the farming community. That makes your church different from a church in Gqeberha. And the last thing is, to lead here, you need to know your own unique strength, what you bring. That allows others to bring their strength. If you don't know your strength, it's possible to hog the whole movement and you'll be 1% shining while it's dark everywhere else.